Hello everyone, welcome to Studitable. My name is Swati, and in this video we'll be talking about Spring Boot, what Spring Boot is, where it is used, and what are the advantages that it provides you. So if you are new to this channel and you have not yet subscribed, I would like you to please subscribe and hit the bell icon also so that you do not miss any further updates from the channel. So without any further ado, let's start the video. So first we'll talk about what is Spring Boot. Well, Spring Boot is a very popular Java framework that is used to create web applications or standalone applications, and Spring Boot simplifies the process of creating Java applications. Like initially when we used to create Java applications, we had to manually install the dependencies. Like if you have created a Java application earlier, then you must have remembered that you have to first download the dependencies from the internet, and then you have to include them in the library section of your Java application, and then you have to build that. After that, those libraries will be included in the class path. Okay, so that was the previous time when everything, most of the things that we did was manual. But Spring Boot simplifies it by providing us the dependency management tool along with it, such as Maven and Gradle, and you can use either one of them. And it eases the process by including the dependencies while creating the application, and that Maven or the Gradle, which is the dependency management tool, it manages the dependencies by itself, and you do not have to manually install or manually download the dependencies and include them into your project. Okay, so it simplifies the process of creating and building as well as running those applications. Okay, uh, I had worked in Eclipse before, and I remember that I used to first install the dependencies and download the dependencies first and then install in the class path. And in some cases, if the dependencies became obsolete, then we have to again change those dependencies and rebuild the project again. So that was very time consuming, and sometimes it was very much frustrating. But with the use of Spring Boot, that thing became very easy. The second is Spring Boot provides a quick and easy way to create standalone, which means ki the application can run as is, that you do not have to include or exclude anything. The moment you create your application, you can run it, and let's create a standalone application, which means it can run individually, that you can run in the whole package is created and nothing needs to be added or included into it to make it run. So the moment Spring Boot creates an application, it is ready to run, it is ready to be launched. Okay, it is built on top of the popular Spring framework. So Spring framework is also used. A Spring framework was used, but before Spring Boot, if you're not using Spring Boot and if you have used Spring framework, then Spring framework we create beans and we have to include some dependencies manually. We have to include the jars. Then we have to also see that what in what way we'll package them in as .jar file or .var file. So the Spring Boot provides you an easy way, but in the backend, and after the Spring Boot application starts running, then the code is converted into the Spring framework itself. That is, the Spring Boot runs on top of Spring framework. So if you have used Spring framework, then something was had to be done manually, but Spring framework made it very easy. So in the end, whatever things that you are creating in Spring Boot, that automatically converts to Spring framework. Like Spring Boot runs on top of Java Spring framework, which means whatever dependencies or whatever inversion of control or the dependency injection Spring framework provides you, the Spring Boot also uses the same, but it eases the process by removing the manual tools and provides everything in a easy way so that the user can use it without doing things in a manual way. Okay, and also the Spring framework features also gets used in Spring Boot, which simplifies the process of Spring based applications. Okay, why Spring Boot so popular? Well, Spring Boot provides key benefit to developers. That is, it provides the inclusion of auto configuration. That is, the Spring Boot remove the boiler code that initially we had to do. Like we had to include the our dependencies, we had to select what framework we need, in what way we'll package it, in jar or in var, or and also we had to choose the server that we wanted to use beforehand, and include that in your application. Only after that your application was ready to run. But Spring Boot provide the auto configuration. That is, the moment you are creating your application, it will provide you with all the options for you to choose, and by default a server is included in the application. That is, Spring Boot has a pre-installed server in itself. It's a Tomcat server, and you don't have to install a server. So the auto configuration auto configuration facilitates the users to create an app, create your components, and thus the boiler code is very much reduced. Okay. Embedded server, Spring Boot has an embedded server, which is the Tomcat server, and which allows developers to create and deploy web applications without the use of an external web server. Initially, then you have to include your server, like you have to first download the server, and then you have to go to that path where the server is installed, and then you have to include the server, and you have to first test the server is running or not. So that problem was also solved by Spring Boot by including an embedded server. Easy setup. Spring Boot provides a simple setup that allows developers to quickly create and configure a new based application with minimal configuration. That is, if you go to start the spring.io and you want to create your application, that it's a very easy setup. You just have to write the package name, the name of the project. You have to choose whether var or jar, or you have to go with Maven, and you can also include the dependencies then and there, and the project will be generated. So creating your project and setting it up is very simple and very straightforward, so that the simple setup process allows the developers to quickly create and configure a new Spring based application with minimal configuration. That is, everything was provided to them at the creation time, so they do not have to worry about anything else, and the setup was very easy, so anyone can do it. And robust testing support. Also, it provides an extensive testing support by including testing frameworks like JUnit and Mockito. When you create an application, you will also find the tab of test, so you can also add your testing code into that, and it also includes the testing tools such as JUnit and Mockito. So if you want to integrate test into your application, you can also do that. And production ready. Spring Boot also provides us health metrics, health checkups, external configurations, which helps us to create production ready applications. That is, through Spring Boot actuator, we can also check the health of the application. And with other tools of Spring Boot, we can also option to create your application, and or in such a way that you can also create it for production ready environment. That is, for environments which are ready for production. That is, you can go and make it live for the world. Where is Spring Boot used? Spring Boot is commonly used in variety of places, such as to create a web application, such as a REST API, web services, MVC based applications. So REST API is also known as the representational state transfer, and which means the state of the applications are transferred from the server to the client, and the client to the server. And APIs means to the some kind of a middleware that helps the connection between client and the server, and through that API the client and the server can talk to each other. Okay. Web services means those services which are running on the web, and the MVC based application means the model view and controller based application, where the model is the database, view is what you see, and controller is what controls the entire thing. So the MVC based applications can also be created using web applications. Microservices, which means small sections of code that can run independently and they can scale independently, and it is well suited for microservices. Spring Boot is well suited for microservices, and since it's very lightweight, and it helps in creating modular architecture, which means simple modules are created which can be built independently and which can also run independently and can also talk to each other through APIs. So these are the basics framework of a microservice. So Spring Boot is very much used in creating microservices also. Batch processing, which means can be used to uh, Spring can be used to build batch processing applications, the data pipelines and ETL processes. What are batch processing? Uh, let's say there are a few tasks that you need to run, but you need resources for that. So those processes that run as a batch, that is a chunk of code or a large amount of data that needs to be updated or that needs to be transferred, then that large chunk of data gets scheduled at some point of time when the resources are more available, that is particularly at night time. So you can also call them as cron jobs. So batch processing can also happen, such as data pipelines where a large amount of data needs to be transferred, and that can be scheduled at particular time, and then those things happen when the you can say the resources are more available, and it easier for the process to take place. And ETL processes also, where extract, and the ETL processes also, which is the extract transform on the load processes, where something needs to be extracted, then it's transformed into something else, that is data is extracted, transformed into some other format, and then it is loaded. So all these kinds of things, they can be scheduled at a particular time and run as a batch. So that Spring Boot is also can also be used there, and also for testing, such as extensive testing support, making it a popular choice for building test driven deployment, and for CI/CD pipelines, where continuous integration, that is continuously things are updating there, whatever you think is happening, it is continuously updating and continuously being tested, and it is a continuous cycle. And Spring Boot is popular, it's a very popular framework to create CI/CD applications. Okay, so what are the advantages that it provides us? So well, we have seen that where it is used and why is it so popular. So definitely the advantages are also very much of Spring Boot, and it's very easy to use. Developers can quickly start in their application at the click of a button by the easy setup, and they do not have to understand the underlying Spring framework, and they just have to work with Spring Boot, and the Spring Boot can handle because it's built on top of the Spring framework. So whatever Spring Boot is doing, it is automatically being transformed into Spring framework only. But developers do not have to need to know the underlying structure, they just have to worry about what they need to do. So Spring Boot makes it easy for them to start with their work without worrying about the underlying Spring framework. Reduces boilerplate code, that is amount of the code to needed to build complex software. That is it, you just have to include your dependencies, you just have to include your libraries, and then you are done. You can easily start with your work, and a lot of boiler code is reduced. Support modern architecture, that is suppose modern architectures like microservices by the use of by supporting the modular architecture, where different modules can run independently. And embedded servers such as Tomcat, Jetty, and Natau, and this Spring Boot supports servers, so developers do not need to worry about deploying web application on conventional app servers. That is, it is including a server, so they do not have to worry about including an external server or worrying about okay, what will happen to the server now? Where will I install or update the server? Okay. Dependency management. Spring Boot starter dependencies make it easier to manage versions of related libraries. So dependency management is very much easy in Spring Boot. Whenever you create an application and we go into pom.xml file, there you will find the list of dependencies that the Spring Boot has integrated into it, and those dependencies will there's the starter dependencies. When you create an application, there is starter dependencies that is included, and those starter dependencies will be shown in the pom.xml file and along with the versions of that. So if you want to include or exclude the dependency, that you can easily do that by adding or removing a dependency. So dependency management is very much easy in Spring Boot. Auto configuration feature can help developers be more predictive. That is, you can use the annotations. If you using the annotation in Spring Boot, that is, we mostly use the REST controller annotation, request mapping annotation, we can use the data annotation or the logs annotation. So the auto configuration feature here, that is the whatever things that we are adding, and the moment we save it, it's configured automatically. So the along with the annotations also, whenever you are creating an annotation, then it automatically gets configured without us having to be go and manually do it. So developers can be more productive because Spring Boot handles the auto configuration part, and Also the community assistance, that is Spring Boot community can help developers who get stuck with mistakes. That is, it's a large community since it's a Java framework and Java is there in the market for a very long time. Along with Spring also, Spring is a very not Spring is an old framework and is very much famous in the tech world. So there are a lot of developers working on it, and also open source projects help in contributing a lot to the code. So there is a lot of community assistance provided to the developers who get stuck with mistakes. So Spring Boot provides you whatever help you need with the whatever help you need in your mistakes. So this was all for the video. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Okay, keep learning, keep growing. Thank you very much.